I get it, you're standing in your living room, eyeing that sleek projector you saw on a YouTube walkthrough, wondering if it'll actually make movie night feel like a private theater without turning the whole space into a tech nightmare. You've probably already imagined the hassle of finding the perfect spot, worrying whether the picture will stay sharp when you pull the couch closer, and fearing you'll waste a good chunk of cash on a device that sounds amazing on paper but ends up being a dim, flickery disappointment. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started digging into short-throw laser projectors, the first thing that kept popping up was the trade-off between throw distance and image quality. A lot of people assume that because a projector can sit just a foot or two from the wall, it must be a budget-friendly compromise. That's not always the case, but it does mean you have to be mindful of how the lens, light source, and Keystone correction work together in a real living room environment. The Bank LH830ST is marketed as a house-mapping projector, which essentially means it's built to throw a full HD image from a very short distance while still delivering decent contrast and color fidelity. In practice, that translates to a setup where you can place the unit on a low cabinet, a coffee table, or even a shelf, and still fill a 100-inch screen without the image looking stretched or washed out. What really matters once you have it on the floor is how the laser light source behaves day to day. Bank says the lamp life is extended, which for a laser DLP generally means you're looking at anywhere from 15,000 to 20,000 hours before any noticeable dimming. In plain English, that's roughly 10 years of weekend movie marathons before you'd even think about a replacement. The upside here is you won't have to keep budgeting for bulb swaps, something that can catch first-time projector owners off guard. On the flip side, laser units tend to run a bit hotter than traditional lamp models, so you'll want to make sure the room has at least a little airflow. I've seen a few reviewers mention the fan can be audible when the projector is pushed to its brightest setting, which is something to consider if you're planning a quiet drama night. Resolution is a straightforward 1080p, and the 4000 ANSI lumen rating gives you confidence that the picture will stay vivid even in a moderately lit room. The key phrase here is moderately lit. If you have a dedicated home theater space you can black out, you'll get the full HDR punch the unit advertises. In a bright living room with windows open, the image will still be usable, but the deep blacks you might expect from a cinema-grade projector will soften a bit. That's not a deal breaker for most casual viewers, but if you're a cinephile who hunts every shadow detail, you might notice the difference compared to a higher lumens, higher contrast model. Contrast ratio is listed at 3:0:0:0:0:0 to 1, which sounds astronomical. In reality, DLP chips paired with laser light can achieve very deep blacks, but the effective contrast you see will still be influenced by ambient light and the screen material you choose. A matte white screen works fine for most setups, but if you're serious about HDR performance, a gray or high-gain screen can help preserve that dynamic range. I've tried the projector with both, and the gray screen gave me a noticeably richer shadow depth while still keeping the colors vibrant thanks to the HDR processing. Connectivity is another area where the LH830ST tries to be flexible. It offers dual HDMI inputs, which means you can hook up a streaming box and a game console simultaneously without constantly swapping cables. The automatic vertical Keystone adjustment is a lifesaver if you're not a fan of fiddling with the projector's physical angle. I've seen it correct a few degrees of tilt on its own within seconds, which is perfect for those who want a set-it-and-forget-it experience. However, the auto Keystone is limited to vertical correction. If you need a horizontal adjustment, you'll still have to manually tweak the mount. For most living room layouts, that's a minor inconvenience, but it's worth knowing before you decide how you'll position the unit. Who should consider buying the LH830ST? If you're a homeowner or renter who wants a large screen experience without drilling holes for a ceiling mount, this short-throw design is a solid match. It shines for families who enjoy streaming Netflix, Disney+, or YouTube in a communal space, and it's also practical for occasional gaming sessions where you want a bigger field of view but don't have a dedicated media room. The laser light source's longevity makes it attractive for people who don't want a budget for periodic lamp replacements. And because it doesn't demand a darkroom, it works well in multi-purpose areas. Think a living room that doubles as a playroom or a home office that turns into a cinema on weekends. On the other hand, there are scenarios where the LH830ST might